So over the last 3 years now of me uploading videos to YouTube, I do get asked quite often about what kind of setup do I have to do with filming. Do I actually use a tripod, and what kind of lights do I use? Now this is my setup that I've been using for the last probably 8 months. It's kind of evolved from plastic plumbing pipe and etc. and things like that. And it's evolved from the plastic plumbing pipe and duct tape to what I've got in front of me now. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is actually make a second rig like this, so I can actually film on the other side of the bench. And I'm going to make the actual arm that holds the camera slightly longer than this, and the lighting slightly longer than this setup. But I thought I'd show you this actual setup, and it is actually quite easy to make, and I've made it all with off-the-shelf parts that you can actually buy off eBay and Amazon. And because I've got no real metalworking skills and I don't have any metalworking tools, I've constructed it in a way that you can easily put this together with a small hacksaw and a drill and some rivets, and you don't have to do any kind of welding or any, you know, in-depth metal work. So it's pretty straightforward. So what I'll do, I'll take you a close-up of this setup first, and then I'll take you over to the bench and I'll show you some of the things that I've purchased in order to make a second one of these. So this is the main camera arm then, and it's quite flexible. I can move it in and out, and I can also extend it so it has a much greater reach. And on the end here I've just got a cheap tripod off eBay and use the mounting plate at the top here, and that allows me to attach the camera there, and then when I'm working I can have it pointing down like that on my work, and then you actually get the same view as you would if you were looking through my eyes. And that's what I was trying to achieve, because originally I did try using a tripod, either sitting behind the tripod or having the tripod on the bench looking in the opposite direction down, but that made it look as if you were looking at the work upside down. So this actually evolved from pieces of plastic plumbing pipe, and also one of those arms off a table lamp with springs on. I had one of those fiberglassed into the side of the plastic plumbing pipe, and you could also extend that out, but it was very fragile, and I think it only lasted me about 6 months, and that's when I decided to actually build this. So the arm itself is attached to this metal pole here that's not attached to the wall in any way. I've got this piece on here, and what that actually does is suppress any vibration that might occur by me knocking the camera, but that also moves up and down. And because it's attached to this pole, I can actually unscrew these two here and move the camera arm up and down depending on the shot that I actually want to get. And as for the lighting, it's also attached to the same pole as the camera arm, so it's all one unit, not attached to the wall at all. And what I've got here, I've got two little side filling lights, if you like, and I've got a main light that's just here, and I've got that slightly offset and out so it's not directly over the work, to try and cut down on reflection. And again, because it's on this pole and I can loosen it off and adjust it, I can move this up or down as I need to, and I can also tilt it out and in, so it's quite flexible. And the whole thing is actually attached to the side of the opposite bench with this satellite dish mounting arm. So as far as the setup's concerned, if I ever had to move, I could quite easily disassemble this, take it with me and use it in another setting, if you will. But the only thing that I found when actually making this originally, I did need to have a piece of wood there propping up the satellite dish mounting arm, because there was quite a lot of weight bearing down on it, so I did need that piece of wood in there just to give it some more support. So the entire rig is actually made from parts that are pretty easy to come by. You can get the majority of these parts off eBay or Amazon, and you don't need any specialist tools to actually make this. Just a hacksaw and a drill will do just fine. So I need to make a second one of these so I can actually film on the other side of the bench, and also film using my little mobile bench that I've got now on wheels. So I want to actually, like I said, make a second one. So I thought it'd be a good idea if I actually filmed it and showed you how I actually put it together, and possibly you don't have to copy exactly what I've done, but it might give you an idea for you to actually set up your own rig. And as I say, you can build all this for about £50 quite easily. So the two main parts that this is actually made up out of then is a keyboard stand, and you can pick these up off eBay. You can pick them up new for around £14, but this one is second hand. I picked it up locally for a £5. And I've also got a clothes rail, because we're going to use the tubing from the clothes rail, and also these little locking nuts here that we're going to use to actually position the camera and lighting as you move it up and down the pole at the side there. And we're also going to use some of this pole as well for the main spine of the boom and lighting rig, if you will. So all these parts you can get quite cheaply. The clothing rail I purchased new, cost about £8, and as I said, the keyboard stand cost me a £5 local pickup. You often see these going for as low as 99p. So I've disassembled the keyboard stand, and I've got one of the pieces here on the bench, and I've got some masking tape on here so you can actually see the marks where I'm actually going to be cutting this section out. And what I'm going to do is actually cut it off here, so this is actually flush along the boom here itself. And this lengthy piece of tubing here is quite lengthy, because this side of the tubing is the part that's going to take all the weight of the camera boom itself, so that's why that is quite long there. And I've measured off from here to here 300mm, so I'm going to cut it off in that section there. When I'm doing measurements like this, I like to keep them as simple as possible so you don't actually forget. So 300mm is a good length for the first part of this arm. So now that I've got this piece cut out, what I'm going to do now is cut off two sections at 250mm long. So I want one section here, and then I've got another section marked off here, and that's going to make the first part of my pivoting arm. And I've made it slightly shorter than this first piece, and that way when it actually folds up on itself, it'll just fold up much neater if it's slightly shorter than this piece here. So I've got all the lengths of box tubing cut off to the lengths that I actually need now. I've got 3 lengths at 300mm and 4 lengths at 250mm. So I'm going to mark off now where I'm going to drill the holes to connect them all together. So I'm marking where I need to drill the holes in order to connect all these together, and what I've got here is an M8 bolt, and it's 100mm long, and that should be long enough to connect all these together with washers in between. And the washers that I've actually got, I've got these quite big ones. They are 30mm in diameter, an appropriate size to pass a M8 bolt through. And what I'm doing is I'm using one of the washers here just to line it up on the square box tubing here, and then drawing a circle in the middle, and that'll tell me where to actually drill my hole. So I'm using the washer as like a little guide to measure off each one. Now, if you don't have access to a drill press, what I suggest you do is actually mark off one of the holes on this side of the box tubing, flip it over and do the same on the other side, and drill both holes independently, because if you try and drill all the way through in one go without a drill press, it will not be straight. So now that we've got all the box tubing cut to length and the holes drilled in the correct places, we can start constructing this camera arm now. So I'm going to construct these 4 sections first then, and this is the top part of the arm, and this is the bottom part of the arm, and I'm going to feed these bolts through the top of the arm here, so then any excess that comes through at the bottom there, once we've got the nut on, we can actually trim away with a hacksaw blade just to tidy it up a little bit. So first of all then, I'm taking one of the bolts and I'm taking one of the smaller washers that I've got here and actually feed the bolt through this part of the arm, and same with the other bolt. So next I'm going to add the larger washers, and what I've done, I've got two of them here, and sandwiched in between there I've got a small amount of silicone grease. And next, two of the larger washers again. And then this part. And now a small washer, and then finally the nut. So I've got this section all tightened up now, and you have to be careful not to actually over tighten this. You want it to actually move, but still have quite a bit of grip there, so it doesn't actually just flop down. And you can see the two large washers there are actually moving, rubbing against each other in between that silicone grease in there. So that's about as tight as I actually want to get it. And this will actually fold over now quite nicely, and as I said, you could actually have one that's just this length instead of doing the second part, and this is about the same size as my original one, but as I said, I want to make a longer one so I can actually do much wider shots on a bigger bench. So now that we've got the arm constructed, what I'm going to do now is mount the donor tripod mount on here so we can actually attach a camera to it. So I've cut the neck off an old tripod, and I've left a length here that's 18mm long. I find that works out best for this kind of setup, and I've drilled a hole in the end of the arm here so they can then insert the neck of the tripod through like so. Now what I've actually done, I've drilled a hole all the way through the square tubing on the arm here, and a hole through the tubing on the neck of this tripod mount, and I'm going to attach a small nut and bolt all the way through there just to hold it in place and give it some strength, and I'm also going to bed it down with some epoxy as well so it'll be in there nice and strong. So here's the arm then, and it's virtually finished. The tripod mount is fixed in there with that little bolt and the epoxy, and I can move that freely around there, so I'm quite happy how that's actually turned out. Now if we take a quick look at the original arm that I made, and you'll probably notice that the diameter of this tubing here with the original keyboard stand that I used is slightly wider than the new one. The new one is just a little bit narrower. Now what that means is the original one here, I used this outer tubing that came with the clothes rail to actually mount this vertically, but because this one's much narrower, I'm going to use the inner tubing that comes with the clothes rail. It's slightly narrower and it fits inside this quite neatly. So this is the narrower tubing inside there, and it does fit quite well. I'm just a little bit disappointed that I couldn't use this wider one because it is a lot more substantial than this chrome tubing, but it should work out fine. Now what we're going to actually need now is some kind of clamping system so we can clamp the arm at a particular height along the tubing there. Now the clothes rails that I found anyway come with either these kind of fittings on the side so you can higher the height of the clothes rail itself, or it comes with these ones which are a simple click on and click off type of clamp. Now with my original design I wasn't able to actually use this type of clamp. I did in the past try to actually narrow the diameter in here so it actually slips over the top of that wider tubing, but it never quite worked out right. But you also see clothes rails with this kind of clamp, and these are actually perfect for clamping the arm in the correct position. Now these ones actually work well on this new arm because I'm using this thinner tubing. These ones actually work out quite well, and if you can find a clothes rail that has these clamps on, and if you're going to copy this the way that I've done it, then you can just use these as they are and they work out really quite well. So this type of clamp with the narrower tubing actually works out quite well. You don't have to modify this at all. So you just actually move your arm up and down to the height that you actually want it, and when you want to hold it there, you can just clamp that down on the tubing itself, and it does a really good job of holding the arm at the correct height, and it's more than strong enough to actually take the weight of the arm. Now if you choose a clothes rail with this type of clamp, and you're going to use it with this wider tubing, if you find a stand with a slightly wider tubing like the first one that I made, you're going to have to modify this slightly to fit over the wider tubing here, and it's just a simple matter of going in there with a Dremel and grounding the little lip that's on the inside of this to actually stop it from going down the tube any further. So you'll have to get rid of that, and then when you do, it just fits over the top of the wider tubing quite nicely. Now if you get a stand with the narrower tubing like this one, you're going to have to slightly modify these to actually fit the narrower tubing, because they're not designed to clamp onto this narrow tubing here. So what I've actually done, I've got a piece of rubber, and I've epoxied the ends on inside this, so it will actually fit over the top of the narrower tubing now, and I can turn that to actually compress that rubber tubing, and it fits on there quite nicely. So you just get a piece of rubber tubing like this and put it inside the clamp itself, and just epoxy the end so it can't move about when you're actually moving it up and down the tubing, and then you can just compress the screw and it makes a really good clamp against the tubing. So I'm going to mount the vertical pole that's going to hold the arm a little bit differently to the bench than my original one. And what I've done here, I've drilled a hole directly in the bench, which is about 10mm wider in diameter than one of these thicker poles, and I'm going to fasten this pole to the side of the bench down here, and then the actual pole that the arm itself is going to move up and down on is going to fit directly inside this thicker tubing. And what I've done, I've actually plugged it with some fiberglass 120mm down into the tubing, so there's about 120mm of this thinner tubing making its way down the wider tubing here, and that should be sufficient to actually take the weight so I can mount the arm to this. Now what I've got here is some foam packaging that I've saved, and I've deliberately made the diameter of the hole roughly about 10 or 12mm wider than this thicker tubing. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap this around the thicker tubing and push it down inside the hole itself, and this foam will act as a barrier from any vibrations from the bench when I'm actually working and filming at the same time, making its way up onto the arm of the camera, and then you get a little bit of camera shake. So it's just to stop that, and it also is a good way of actually holding it in place as well. So now that I've packed the foam around the tubing there in the hole as well, it actually holds it in there really strongly, and I was actually going to use some U-bolts as well to actually fasten this to this part of the bench here, but because it's so strong I don't think I'm going to bother. I think this will be fine as it is. So here is the camera boom actually finished there, and I'm quite pleased how it actually turned out. It does extend to cover the entire length of this bench here, and I can extend it out in this direction to actually film on a mobile bench that I can bring at the side here that I've got in the lab that's on wheels, and that's what I actually set out to do initially in designing this. And to finish it off as well, I found these end caps on eBay. You can buy them lots of different sizes, and the seller was selling I think it was 18 of these for just a few pounds, so it wasn't expensive. and it goes in the end of the tubing here and just finishes it off quite nicely. And to stop any vibration along the camera arm itself, what I've actually done is tie it into my vintage HP network analyzer here. So all I've done is made a little cork piece that goes over the tubing, and I've just tied it into one of the mounts on the HP analyzer that was originally used for actually mounting it in a rack. But again, depending on where you actually build this in your lab, you could probably tie it into a wall if you wanted to, or make the little shock absorber that I made with my first build. So next I'm going to move on to the actual lighting for this little video rig. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to split it into two videos because I don't want it to be too long. So I'm going to call this one part 1, and the next video, part 2, will be all about the lighting boom that goes across the top here. So if you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, any comments or questions below, and hopefully you'll join me on part 2.